All right, so the last bit of Module 101 is changing run levels, boot targets, shutting down, and rebooting. So now the concept of the run level of the boot target is interesting because it allows us to define what mode the system should be in when it shuts, well, after we shut it down and we reboot. What level do we want to come up at? Do we want to be in a multi-user mode? Do we want to enable networking? Do we want to be in single user mode? These are some of the options that are available to us. And we'll see why that's important here in just a little bit. We also want to be able to let people know if we're going to shut the system down, to make changes, to reboot, and so on. How do we let everybody know that that's happening so that they can save their work and log off? So we saw a few of these things earlier. Etsy init tab we know doesn't exist, or it's not supported in modern systems based on systemd. Also, the Etsy init.d directory, the init program we saw was linked to systemd. But there's also some commands like systemctl that we saw in the previous section of this module. And then we'll look at what the telinit command does, what the init command does. And so we'll wrap up with talking about wall, which we'll see here in just a little bit. So as we talked about in the last module, init is the first program. This is what is the process ID of 0, and all other processes are spawned from that parent process of init. So System 5 systems will read from Etsy init.d. So earlier versions of CentOS, or even Red Hat Enterprise Linux and so on, will use that method. Upstart is supported by Ubuntu and Fedora, and then systemd with newer versions of Red Hat, newer versions of Fedora and CentOS. Now I can run, generally with a Unix or Linux system, there's more than one way to accomplish a task. There's not just one way to say I want to change my run level. I can do it a few different ways. I can run the init command. I can also run the telinit command. And I can run commands to show me details about my current run level if I want to make changes to that in any way. So all three of these commands, system control, init or telinit, can be used to move between these different run levels that we see here. Run level 0 is halting the system. It's powered off. So if I tell using systemctl, init, or telinit, if I want to go to run level 0, that basically means turn the system off completely. I can go to single user mode, which is my rescue target. Single user mode is useful because I can force the system into this mode so that no one else can log in. Networking services are not even started. This way I can get a bunch of things done like file system maintenance, kernel maintenance, troubleshooting booting problems perhaps, all different things, and be able to do my work in a way that's isolated, and that way I can't be disturbed until I'm finished with my work, and then I can go back into a multi-user mode like run level 2. Run level 2 is multi-user without networking, which is not all that useful in many cases, but it's still useful for certain purposes. Generally, I'm going to be in multi-user mode with networking enabled, because that allows the multiple users to get to the system over the network instead of being directly connected. Then we have run level 5. Run level 4 is configurable as it says, so you can define this for different things. Not really important for this discussion right at the moment. But run level 5 is what we associate with a Windows or window manager type of environment. This is my graphical target. It allows me to use the system in a graphic mode, which is certainly what we generally want. So if I run the init command, I can run init 6, and that's a reboot. So very quickly, it's taking my system, shutting it down, and it's going to start back up. Now this is the grub menu that I talked about a little bit earlier. We'll see more details about this later. But that 5-second timer, that's what allows me to have a chance to change my kernel settings. I can pick from between the kernels that are here. I've got two different ones to choose from, and also a rescue kernel. But we'll look more at that later. Right now, I'm just going to let it boot from the default setting. And during the boot process, we see a bunch of messages. Not too many there because of the way I stopped it. But generally, I can see what the system is doing, what it's running as it's coming up, what it's loading. And now I'm going to go ahead and log back in. Takes a moment. All right, so I just did an init 6, which rebooted the system. I could have done it with tellinit 6. I could have also run shutdown-r. Even the reboot command. Now, reboot with power off or reboot with a force option, there's sometimes reasons why you'd want to do this. Reboot with power off is kind of nonsensical in a way, right? Why would I want to reboot but then power off? You can run the power off command to accomplish the same thing. I can just say, shut the system down and stay down. Turn yourself off. Very similar to what the halt command does. Or init 0 or tellinit 0. You might be thinking, well, why are there so many options? It's because some of these methods are older legacy methods and they're still supported. The shutdown command is nice, though, because it gives us the ability to also send a message or configure a time delay. So I'll make that full screen again. And I'm going to use my su command to become root. We'll talk about that later. But if I look at shutdown, I can see that I can run it with -h or --halt. You'll notice that I ran the --help. This gives me a different output than if I ran a man command. Man is much more detailed and gives you a lot more info, usually some examples as well. Not really too many in this case, but shutdown-r will reboot the machine. I can also use -k to just send a warning, but not actually do the shutdown. And I can configure a time delay. So if I run shutdown-r, it gives me a nice message saying shutdown scheduled. I can run shutdown-c to cancel this. Now it's canceled. Now, if I run shutdown by default, it should give me a 60-second window that everybody sees once they get the message. So this broadcast message that we see here, this goes to everybody that's logged in through a terminal. They'll see a message and they probably get a terminal beep as well. It's intended to get their attention so they can say, oh, geez, the system's going to be shutting down. I had better save my work and get ready for logging back in later. So that alerting function is pretty useful because often a shutdown is something that we want to do in a timely fashion. So all I have to do is use a plus sign and a number in minutes, and I can configure this. So if I run this command, so shutdown-r to reboot or -h to halt, whatever it is, +5. So now it says system's going down for reboot at 2051, which is 5 minutes from now because it's 2046. And again, as before, I can run shutdown-c to cancel that. So pretty handy. All right, and then the last thing to remember for this module is that these are the commands we looked at. These are all pretty easy to use, very simple to become familiar with. And as before, I recommend that you spend some time with that and do some practice. All right, that gets us to the end of the first module. Our next module is installation of Linux and package management. See you then. Thank you.